everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Friday Food Fight. My name is Wes Christian, your host for this week, and I am joined once again by Mr. Bart Christian, nationally recognized speaker, and a very special guest. Bart, why don't you tell us a little about our very special guest for this week?
Wes, it's an honor to be back again. I'm excited to be here, and I can't tell you how great it is to introduce my very dear friend, Dr. John Poidevant. You know, John's been a friend for, I don't know, John, how long have we been friends? 18, 19, 20 years?
I think it's 19 years now, Bart.
Yeah, a long time. And you know, when I first met you, John, and we hung out and did some things together, I never really, up until about 5 years ago, never really understood or appreciated just how accomplished an individual you are. You know, I know that you started your own business now called Resilient Horizons, but there's so many things that you've done in the realm of psychology and psychiatry for children in schools across Georgia and across the Southeast. Now, just to name a few of your accomplishments, I know that you were in 2013. You're named the Georgia Association of School Psychologists of the Year. You've been an assistant professor and coordinator of school counseling at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. You founded and been the founder and director of Developmental Associates, and you've also worked for the Center for Psychological and Educational Assessments in Georgia. And now you're an accomplished author. You've done a multitude of things. You got a PhD, a master's in education, a specialist in psychology, a specialist in education. I've said this to you before, but you're way too smart to be my friend.
Well, Bart, I'd have to disagree with that, but thank you for that. Yes, the career track has been a wild adventure for sure, and it's nice to be retired and to be really, I say retired, focusing on a new chapter of life with Resilient Horizons and continuing to remain in the game in a good way, but also having opportunity to really step back and enjoy life as well.
Well, one of the many things that people don't know about you, well, people who know you do, but maybe they don't know in the schools, is that you're an avid outdoorsman and you love nature. You know, every time we visit with you guys, you know, we're taking walks by the lake and maybe kayaking in the lake and doing those kind of things. I know that you've motorcycle adventured across the country, taking the back roads and not really taking the paved roads, which I think would be a lot of fun. And you're an accomplished guitarist, and you're also a sailor. You know, I know that you've got a lot of passions in your life, but how important is it to have a particular hobby or a passion that you're just obsessed with to kind of get away from things?
Yeah, well, Bart, I think it's really important, especially in today's world, to have interests that you can go out and really immerse yourself in. It's really, I think, critical to well-being to be able to get out and really focus and enjoy and reflect on life and what's important. And really a lot of it's kind of self-care too, because, you know, through nature and also through just being around people in those pursuits, it's just very rewarding and kind of keeps my batteries charged.
Yeah. You know, one last thing is I know that, you know, you've done a lot of work with children, and your focus with Resilient Horizons is actually working with school kids, if I'm correct. And you've utilized a lot of things like magic and puppetry and things like that. And I know you've given multiple presentations on those two things to groups across the state and across the Southeast. What drew you to that, to use that particular method to teach resiliency to our school children?
Yeah, I think in today's world, Bart and Wes, you know, it's really important to build those bridges of communication, and it's harder than ever because of the influence of technology, and in particular, by that I mean gaming. And certainly nothing wrong with gaming and technology. I really like it and enjoy it. However, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. So we had to create some very stimulating and engaging ways to connect and communicate our message, and it was through magic, music, puppetry that we found some very powerful ways to communicate a very important core message of resiliency to our students.
So do we add magician to your list of accomplishments too?
Well, you could add that to the list, but definitely don't add computer technology person to the list. Definitely not where I am. We'll let Wes handle that part.
Amen.
Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to pull everything together and make sure it runs smoothly, or at least semi-smoothly. So,
Bless you, Wes.
now, hey, John, I got a question for you because you had mentioned, you've got a lot of hobbies, you've got a lot of things that you're into outdoors, and I know sailing is something that I see you're doing frequently. So that's a hobby of yours for sure. How important is it for people just across this country right now, and really across the world, with everything going on, to really find something that they can have a little bit of a release doing?
Yes. Well, Wes, I think that's a great question because, there's a saying that adventure may hurt you, but monotony will kill you. And so many people fall into those ruts. I think Bobby Bowden, the Florida State football coach, said that the difference between a groove and a rut is just a few inches. And so often people fall into ruts and they don't venture outside their comfort zone. They don't try new activities. They don't go out and engage in any kind of adventure. And really that's where you really connect and enjoy and fulfill your life. And especially when you do those things in the company of other people, it adds a level of engagement and helps you to be more capable of working through problems because you have a support net there with you. Yep.
It helps you be resilient. And that kind of leads me into my next question. What exactly does resiliency mean to you?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I noticed in working with students is that as my career continued, I was noticing less and less resiliency among our youth. And resiliency is basically the ability to overcome adversity or problems in your life. And unfortunately, resiliency skills are not developing at a rate they should with our youth. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. So it really became a passion of mine. And especially, and it's difficult to say, but the greatest failure that occurs when an individual doesn't have resiliency is they lose all coping skills and ultimately they become at risk for suicidal ideation or worse yet, ending their own life. And sadly, that has become a very large problem in our country, particularly among youth. So again, the importance of increasing resiliency skills in youth it just became very apparent as my career continued. And then when I retired, I wanted to continue with that message and really just started looking around for the best format to impart a strong message. And so that's kind of what led us to founding Resilient Horizons, which is all about imparting and promoting the power of resiliency among our youth and adults.
John, do you think, given the situation, I know that you've done a lot of past work in suicide prevention in school districts and working with at-risk children, where do you kind of see things now with the kids being kind of isolated and being not getting to get that social interaction that they've had in the past? Is resiliency going to become even a greater challenge going forward when kids begin to come back to school?
Yeah, it is. It's becoming increasingly important, and particularly with the increased isolation due to COVID-19, where students are not able to connect as frequently as they would like, and they're more restricted in their settings. So it's become an even bigger problem. And one of the big preventative factors is having friends and connections in your life. And so with COVID and being more isolated, that's become an issue. And sadly, suicide rates, which are already high, have increased due to COVID and the isolation factors that go with that.
And just for clarification, how is resiliency different than, say, having a positive mental attitude or outlook on life?
Well, that's an excellent question. And a positive mental attitude in life is very important, and it's actually a part or a component of resiliency. But resiliency is going to have a lot more than just a positive mental attitude. There'll be other factors too. Having resiliency includes having a good social connection. It means having positive supportive behaviors that they engage in. And a lot of life, is about attitude. And I think about the product line, Life is Good. And life is good, and I love what they're doing and sharing that message. But also life is difficult and challenging. And so it's very important that we impart a message that conveys that yeah, life is good, it's exciting, but at times it's very hard too. And so we try to instill, social skills, positive behaviors, the importance of the attitude, and also so many kids lose hope and they don't have a future orientation. And that's one of the big risk factors. Is if I ask a student, where do you hope to be 3 to 5 years from now, and they can't answer it, that's not a good sign. So.
And is resiliency something that you feel is something that you're just born with, or is it something that is a learned behavior?
Yeah, there are different types of resiliency, and everyone is born with an innate or natural amount of resilience. Everyone comes to life with a certain amount, and some people have a lot, and other people do not. So there are different types of resiliency. One is just the natural resiliency that we're born with. And there's another type called adaptive resiliency, and that's basically what we kind of learn on the path of life. You can think of it as trial by fire, and sometimes those are really important skills that we learn, and they're memorable, but they can also help protect us. And there's another type of resiliency as well called restored resilience, and that's just things that you purposefully go out and learn about resiliency. Is when you can go out and read books and study things that will actually help you become more resilient, then that can really help to bolster, support your resiliency skills.
Don't you think positive mental attitude is just it's a factor, but that it's like it can be built. But the thing I find in this particular time, and I find it in myself, because I the last 6 months have been particularly challenging for me, because I find I've learned that I gain a lot of my resiliency from my interaction from other people, and by either helping people or speaking to people, or I didn't realize how much strength I actually gained from being around other people. And I know that was, I was reading an article by the American Psychiatric Association, and they were talking about, and the top 10 things for resiliency, and positive mental attitude is actually number 7 on the list. That there were so many other things, and above that was helping others and interacting with others and having goals and things like you're talking about. So I always used to think that was the key thing, that I'm beginning to understand that it's a kind of witch's brew of things that build resiliency within a person.
Yeah, it really is. And unfortunately, a lot of students, youth today, are not learning the normal kind of social skills that we may have enjoyed or developed growing up. And and again, having those social skills, people that you can call on in times of hardship, is really, really key. And that's one of the factors that contribute to people developing the suicidal thoughts, is they feel like they don't have, or they believe that they don't have people in their life they can call on. And so that's why it's very important that adults in a child's life always encourage social skills. And if you look at a lot of the youth today, they're missing those skills, and unfortunately, a lot of them are so into the use of technology. And again, technology is a great tool, but it's also important they become more aware of how to interact and demonstrate good social skills, especially when they go to seek a job or employment.
And just out of curiosity, what type of, I guess, self-evaluation do you recommend to people to really, I guess, determine whether or not they have a high resiliency towards things? Because I can see, lots of people sitting out there watching this saying, oh, I'm extremely resilient. I've been through so many different things in my life, and so on and so forth. And they may feel that they're resilient, but maybe they're not as resilient as they think. What type of analyzing or what type of tools do you recommend to people to really help them to get more information on this?
Yes, there are a lot of checklists out there available, and some formal resiliency scales you can use to assess resiliency. Some are formal and have an actual score, and others are more just sort of a checklist. But there's a lot out there, that you can use to assess resiliency. And keep in mind too, Wes, that everyone has an innate amount of resiliency, but there's a point in everyone's life where their coping skills or their resiliency skills are no longer sufficient, where they need that extra help. And that's where having that support network of friends close by that you can call on in times of true hardship becomes so important in their life. And so if you're really concerned about that, seeing a mental health professional, a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker, they can help assess the degree of resiliency. And again, always listening very carefully. If anyone in and around your life makes a comment, either direct or indirect, about having thoughts of not being here, there are two types of statements to look for. One is indirect, where they might say something like, I just don't really feel good being here. I wish I wasn't here anymore. That's kind of indirect, and obviously that's a concern. Sometimes we have students make direct statements like, I'm going to crash my car on the way home, or I'm going to go home and take a lot of pills. A direct statement indicating their resiliency skills have really faltered and they need professional support, help.
Would those be the same kind of signs that you'd look for in adults? I mean, now I know you've done a lot of work with children, but I also understand you have a tremendous amount of expertise in the field of people in general. What specific tips, maybe as we're going back to work and people are showing back up to work and beginning to interact once again with people, what are things we can look for in the workplace with adults? Because adults can sometimes be a little bit less direct and be a little bit more obscure than maybe a child might be.
Right. Well, one of the things you want to look for is any kind of marked, clear change in behavior of how the person used to be versus how they are now. And that can even be going from sad to happy, because sometimes people who become suddenly very happy are that way because they have a plan to address their problem. Hopefully that's a positive plan, but sometimes we'll see a change where they're actually feeling better because they have a plan to perhaps even end their life. So again, looking very carefully, listening to others. One of the best ways to do that is to put down the cell phones and look and engage people and ask them, how are you doing? How is your life different with COVID-19? How is your life different in a good way? And how is it different in a bad way? And of course, for most people, the bad's going to outweigh the good, but there have been some positive aspects too with COVID in terms of how people are spending more time talking and connecting in families and also in communities. In our, yep. I was just going to say, in our community here, we see more people out walking their dogs, talking to each other, playing Frisbee in the park than we did before COVID hit. So, that, and people are out boating more often. So there's more outdoor activity, which is generally a plus. So that's, out of everything bad comes something good. We have to be cognizant and aware of that.
And I've seen that around here, just with the hiking trails being significantly busier than normal, beaches being a little bit busier. So it seems like a lot of people are getting outdoors and getting that fresh air that sounds like is very needed.
Yes, it is. And if you look at the sales of like bicycles and kayaks and RVs, those particular industries are just booming because people are connecting more in the outdoors. And so again, that's a plus that has come out of a difficult situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a doctor, you've spent a large majority of your life studying, reading, and just bettering yourself with education. What types of things are you doing now as far as reading, meditation? Are you using any types of tools to really help with continuing your mental growth?
Yes, I think, as I entered retirement, I went ahead and kind of created my own resiliency plan and trying to find that balance. But looking at, continuing to be very active, the more physical activity you have, the better off you are. I enjoy reading, I'm writing a book. So I'm trying to take all those elements of life, faith being one, and working on building a good foundation to deal with the challenges. Because even though we're in a positive, pleasant stage of life with retirement, it also has its own unique challenges and problems that we have to work through. But I think everybody, regardless of stage of life, can benefit from having some kind of resiliency plan, a go-to plan when life gets difficult, because it will, and it does get very difficult at times, and we have to be ready. I like to think of resiliency in many ways, guys, as a toolkit, and everyone has certain tools that they keep in their toolkit to handle life's problems and stressors. But at some point along your path of life, you're probably going to run out of tools in your toolkit. And that's where you need to make sure you've got that support net, those people in your life that can encourage, support, redirect you, help you get through the challenging, tough times, because they are coming. And that's something a lot of parents sometimes misunderstand, is that, they're very well intentioned, but they try to safeguard their children from all forms of hardship and challenge. And while we love and want to protect our children, resiliency cannot occur, it cannot develop unless there is adversity or hardship in their life. And so finding that balance of helping children to understand how to problem solve, how to manage their emotions, how to keep a plan in life when life gets hard, and letting them know that, life's not always like Disney World. You're going to have challenges and hardship. And the more they're able to deal with that and understand that and develop a toolkit, the better off they are along the path of life. And so again, with a lot of parents who hover over their children and don't allow the hardship, they are, in my opinion, doing a disservice to their children in that role. I could say.
And you mentioned that you have been reading some books. Is there any specific books that you would maybe name for some of our viewers to look into?
Yes, Wes, there's one book in particular I'd recommend. It's called The Resiliency Breakthrough: Tools for Turning Adversity into Action. And it's by an author, Christian Moore, who has a fascinating life story. But he talks about 4 different types of resiliency: building relationships, being street smart, how to identify resources, figure out resources that can help you, and what to do if you hit rock bottom. And it's a great, very, very practical book that just about anyone can benefit from reading. And just a great author and a great story. So Christian Moore and The Resiliency Breakthrough.
And we'll put that in the show notes also, so people can easily find that.
Okay.
One thing, John, I didn't realize in looking at your bios that you've created, you've been in multiple journals and written multiple articles on the topic. And I know that right now you're working on a book of your own. Tell us a little bit about the book and when you think it's going to be out, and give us a little bit of a preview of what we can expect.
Yeah, sure, Bart. So one of the things we've learned about resiliency is a lot of times students really start to falter during their middle school years. So I'm writing a book. It's actually an adventure novel for middle school students. It's actually for 6th through 9th graders, but it's called Into the Vortex. And it's basically the story of a 12-year-old boy who goes through a series of hardships. And a lot of the hardships that he endures, we've actually endured in our family, including the boy losing his father. And we all know the impact that can have on students. But basically, it's how he develops resiliency and overcomes difficulties and problems in his life. And it all kind of unfolds on a river, where he goes off on an adventure with many of his friends, and he disappears while he's on the river trip. And the storyline talks about or includes how he's able to use resiliency to not only survive, but to actually thrive. And so embedded in the story are key resiliency skills that everyone needs in life, especially middle schoolers, in order to overcome and thrive in really adverse conditions. And essentially what it is, it's a story of hope and optimism. And the basic core message is, no matter what happens in your life, do not ever, ever, ever give up, because there are always solutions and options that you can pursue. And that is one of the best protective factors that you can impart to a middle schooler, is that idea of no matter what happens in life, it's going to be tough. You have to learn to roll with the changes, and you have to keep trying and not give up.
One of the things I read
message
in your, I'm sorry, yeah, and that is great, man. One of the things I noticed in what you said, and I've noticed what I've been reading about resiliency and reading in the things that you've written, is that mentoring is a very important part of it. And I think sometimes people don't understand just how important it is to give away a little bit of yourself in order to get a little. I'm always amazed at how much I can give to when I give to someone else, how much more I actually get back than I actually invested. And I want you to touch on that for a real quick minute, because I know people are returning to work and they're kind of going to come to work in a very likely different environment. People are going to be somewhat discouraged to a degree because of the way things. How can we mentor each other, encourage each other, and motivate each other, and maybe collectively build each other's resiliency in the workplace?
Well, Bart, I think you're right. It's sort of a re-entry into the work world or into the school world, and we are re-entering into a different world, and one that includes social distancing. And really, I understand the concept, but to me, that term is really not appropriate, because what we're recommending is physical distancing, maintaining physical distance. We need to maintain social connection. So I think we need to look at that term carefully, because we don't want to socially distance. That is push people out of our life. We want to include them more. So, I think a lot of the things that we can do when we get back in the workplace is to talk with our friends, our family, about, how did you handle the COVID situation? What were the things that worked for you? What didn't work? Encouraging more than ever outside activities. Out of very difficult circumstances comes an opportunity to change. In fact, the word crisis has a Greek derivative that basically says danger, that there's an opportunity for change. And when that change comes, it can be very positive. So out of a lot of crises often emerge, very positive developments. And so I think, by talking about things with our friends and encouraging and finding out what worked for them, we can all benefit from that, because everyone benefits, in different ways. But again, this is an opportunity to really reconnect more so than ever. And again, a lot of it stems from the technology, which can be a great tool, like we're using it today in a very positive way to connect with each other, but also making sure that we balance that with true face-to-face communication and interaction, and supporting and encouraging each other.
Absolutely.
Well, I can't thank you both enough for being on the show. And in our last kind of closing couple of minutes, Bart, John, is there anything that you'd like to leave our viewers with, either on the topic of resiliency or on a different topic?
Yes, I think really, Wes, the message we're trying to convey is that, for everyone in their life, you're going to endure hardship, challenges, difficulties, and just making sure you have those tools. And the message, kind of our core message or our mantra in our company, is to roll with the changes. When life flips you over, and it will, today, next week, next month, it's going to be difficult. Making sure you have the skills to roll with those changes. And so after many various trials, we have decided, to try a lot of different ways to spread that message. And so actually I've written the book, but we're also going to be coming out with a product line of t-shirts and hats, wristbands, posters, all with positive resiliency sayings that are based in and around roll with the changes. And so our parent company is Resilient Horizons, and that's kind of the knowledge foundation base. But rollwiththechanges.com is going to be a product line where we're going to be actually promoting the power of resiliency, so that, just like the life is good message is, that's a great message, but we want to broaden that message and encourage others to understand that, yeah, life's good, but it's also difficult at times. And you want to make sure you have the skills and the knowledge and the support to overcome whatever happens in your life, as those tough days are coming ahead, along with many good, wonderful, positive days too. But that's part of the roller coaster of life, and we got to be ready for all that. But I do want to thank both of you for having me on your show. I appreciate, what you're doing. I think that, food service and making sure the students and youth of our country are well fed is a key, important aspect of resiliency, because if children are hungry and not properly nourished, the physical aspect of resiliency is going to be really lacking. And so the job that you're doing, equipping the food service workers in our country to understand their role and to provide great safety practices is really an essential link to helping youth move forward. So I want to thank both of you for what you do as well.
I just want to echo a couple of things that John said, and that's that shift happens. I've said that over and over again across the country, that shift happens and you just got to roll with it. And you mentioned the word crisis, and I know the Greek, but there's a very interesting symbol in the Chinese language that depending on how it's used in a sentence, it's the exact same symbol, and it means both danger and opportunity. And I think that's where we're at. That, you know, we're at a point where we have to make the choice to pivot, and if we'll pivot towards each other and build on. And this is such a cliche, but we really are all in this together. And if we'll build on it together, work together, be sensitive to each other as we come back together, I think we'll make ourselves more resilient and stronger than we've ever been. Because, you know, it's always been said, it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And there's no doubt that there's a lot of much stronger people walking around today than there were 6 months ago.
Right. I think you're exactly right. It reminds me, Bart, of that saying they use in the Marines a lot, which is whatever comes your way in life, improvise and overcome. And that's what it comes down to.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate your time. We know you've both got busy schedules. And for everyone out there watching, thank you for tuning in. This has been another great episode of Friday Food Fight. We'll see you again next week at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Take care.